This is the 2023 Honda XR150L. And this is the 2021 Honda CT125. And this is a side-by-side comparison of the two. Let's take a look at how these two machines are similar and the ways in which they're different. The XR150 is brand new to the United States in 2023. It's a 150cc carbureted engine. Carb is right here. It's a disc brake front and a drum brake rear. It is a 5-speed manual, and it does have a hand clutch. It uses a 19-inch front wheel, a 17-inch rear wheel. It has 7.1 inches of suspension travel in the front, and it has 5.9 inches of suspension travel in the rear. And it does use Honda's ProLink rear preload adjustable rear shock. It has a fuel capacity of 2.8 gallons. That includes a 0.9 reserve. And according to Honda, it weighs 282 pounds. Some things to keep in mind about this: it does come stock with this really nice rear rack, but it does have a very basic display. There's no tachometer, only an odometer, a trip odometer, and then turn signal indicator, headlight indicator, and neutral indicator. There's no gear indicator and there is no fuel gauge. Additionally, it does not have LED lights. It does not have an LED headlight, and it does not have LED turn signals. And then we have the Trail. The Trail is a 125cc electronic fuel injected. It has front and rear disc brakes. The front does have ABS. It is a 4-speed auto clutch, so it has no hand clutch. You can operate the clutch with your foot, but again, it's only a 4-speed. The Trail has two 17-inch wheels. It has 3.9 inches of suspension travel in the front and 3.4 inches in the rear. It has a 1.4 gallon fuel tank with a 0.3 gallon reserve. The fuel tank is located underneath the seat. And according to Honda, it weighs 259 pounds. Some other things to keep in mind about the Trail: it also has a rear rack, a much larger rack in fact. It does have an LED headlight and LED turn signals, and it does have a digital display. The digital display does have a fuel gauge. It does have an ABS indicator, should something trigger it. It has a headlight indicator, turn signal indicator, maintenance required light, and a neutral indicator as well. Something else to keep in mind about the CT125 is that it does have a center stand, and it does have a kickstart despite being fuel injected, but it is a one-passenger motorcycle, and it does have a very firm seat. The seat on the XR150L, in contrast, is much softer, but not uncomfortably so. It is also a 2-seater, and it does have passenger foot pegs, whereas the CT125 does not in the United States. With the two motorcycles side by side, we can take note of how different the saddle height is. The XR150 has a saddle height of 32.8 inches, where the CT125 has a saddle height of 31.5 inches. Additionally, the XR150 has 9.6 inches of ground clearance, whereas the Trail only has 6.5 inches of ground clearance. It is important to note that the CT125 does come with the skid plate from the factory, however. To give you an idea of how the saddle heights compare when seated on the motorcycles, I'm 6'2" and weigh 185 pounds, and this is my seating position on the CT125 and on the XR150. Now, the CT125 does already have modifications to stretch out the cockpit a little bit because I am taller, but the XR150 is in stock form, and you can see that I am sitting on the driver's seat comfortably without any modifications. Honda does list the XR150L with a base price of $2,971, whereas the Trail's base price is $3,999. But you might be asking yourself, how do these two compare to each other on and off-road? Well, let's take each of them for a test ride and dive a little further into that. First up in our road test here is the XR150L. As you can see, we're on a 2-lane highway. This is not like Route 40 or something where the speed limit's like 60 to 70. This is a 45 mile per hour speed limit road with a moderate amount of traffic as we're across from an outlet mall, some restaurants. And this thing really has no problem cruising on it. It's very comfortable. I have good visuals out of my mirrors. I'm 6'2", so I'm on the taller side of things with very long legs. But like right now, I'm going 45, almost 50. With basically no problem. I don't even think I'm in 5th gear, am I? I am in 5th gear, but I'm only a quarter turn into the throttle, so it's got quite a bit more. The power through it is very smooth. It's very easy to tell when it needs to shift. The engine is very quiet. It's very muffled. As I said in my last video about the XR150, my first impressions video, there's definitely going to be some people that are going to want to put louder pipes on it. I'm not sure what the options are out there yet for this bike in the United States, but that's something for you people that like loud bikes to consider for sure. One of the things that I notice as a taller person is all of the wind on my chest. I'm getting quite a bit of wind from this motorcycle. I think on a windy day, it would be helpful to have some sort of small windscreen. I know not everybody's into that, especially if you're riding off-road, but it definitely would be a good addition to this. So we are currently on quite a steep grade on the Blue Ridge Parkway, and I'm cruising right along at the speed limit behind this car in front of me. I could go faster, but I have to obey the rules of the road here and not pass this person, but I could if I needed to, which is a really nice benefit to this motorcycle. As I said earlier in the video, the display on this motorcycle is very, very basic. We have no tack, so you really have to be in tune with how the motorcycle feels and how it sounds to know when to shift. And then you also aren't going to have any fancy indicators, and you're also not going to have a fuel gauge. So if you're going to be using this motorcycle on longer journeys, it's going to be really important to use your trip odometer and make sure that you're paying attention to when you've refueled and what kind of terrain you're riding on. Best practice is to get a feel for what it gets in terms of gas mileage, pop the gas cap off before you start your ride, and check and take a visual look at what actually is inside the tank. It does have quite a big reserve. It's got a 0.9 gallon reserve. So if it starts to sputter, you can just turn the petcock to reserve and then find the nearest fuel station. Perfect timing. With the tunnel, we can test the headlight. You can see it's not particularly bright. It is bright enough for a halogen bulb, but one of the things that I think that I will do to this in the future is put an LED headlight bulb in it, just to get a little better visual when you're riding in dark conditions. The other thing is the horn. It's quite loud. Perhaps not as loud as a bigger motorcycle. Maybe not even as loud as the CT125, but honestly, it's acceptable. I don't think there's any issue with it at all. Now, if you watched the last video, my introductory video on the 150L, you'll recognize where we are. This is Bent Creek. The This is a public road that you can ride bicycles, motorcycles, access trailheads, all that off of. We are going to ride down into Bent Creek on the dirt road, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how I like this on dirt. One of my takeaways from my first impression video was how smooth this felt off-road. It is very smooth. It doesn't have as much travel as, say, Tyler's KTM 350 or like a DRZ or something. But honestly, this feels very good. It has rained the last few days here, but I haven't felt the tires slip at all, and I've definitely gone through some muddy corners, some loose corners as well. But none of it seems to be a problem for this. I would like to turn around right now. And ride up some of this steeper stuff just to give you an idea of how it does. The turning radius feels really good. That didn't take that much room to turn around. And it's making easy work out of these bumps and loose muddy corners. This is the kind of thing where I probably will leave those stock tires on until I wear them out. This is pretty loose. Yeah, I rolled right over top of all of that. We do have a steep little grade back here that we could check out. Now, I can't ride on any of the trails in here, but this is just a little turnaround, like a little pull-off for somebody. And again, this is where I stopped in the first impression video. If you haven't watched that, you should check it out. But this is a good little steep little bank right here. Let's see if we go right up this or not. I did the other day, but it's muddy now. Yeah, right up and over. One of the things that hits me right away about this motorcycle when I ride it off-road is I wish Honda had added bigger foot pegs to it. The foot pegs on this are teeny tiny. I've never ridden a Navi, but I imagine that this is what is on the Navi. I think the foot pegs on the CT125 are definitely bigger in stock form, as I haven't replaced those in the time that I've had it, which is just around 2 years. The other thing is, I wish Honda had just included a skid plate on this from the factory. Maybe not even a nice one, but perhaps the plastic one that they do sell as an aftermarket accessory. Even in just this little bit, because it is loose, I am worried about things kicking up and striking the engine case. Although the odds of it right now are fairly low. But I will say I'm very happy with the off-road braking performance of this motorcycle. I can stop very quickly if I need to, which is nice. I do wish that it had ABS, as that is a nice safety feature to have, especially on road. But the fact that it does not really matter. My older BMW does not have ABS either, and I've had no issues with that. This section is very rough, and it's a very steep downhill. I'm not even laying on the throttle, actually. My hands are off of the bar. Not completely, but off of the controls, I should say. They are on the bars. They are off of the controls. But this thing just tracks straight. I didn't have to correct it, really. It wanted to go straight. There was nothing big enough to shuffle the wheel sideways or anything like that. The 19-inch front is a good choice, and the 17. Overall, I think this is a fantastic motorcycle for off-road use. It's light, it's powerful, for what it weighs anyway. It's very easy to maneuver in all sorts of conditions. It comes with good tires. I just wish Honda had put a skid plate on it, and I wish Honda had put bigger foot pegs on it so that you could stand and not worry about your feet sliding off if you're over technical terrain or something. I think when it comes to pavement, what you'll find is that a small 2-lane road like this is really where this motorcycle is happiest. A low speed limit with nice curves because it's a maneuverable motorcycle, and it really lets you take a look around and see what's around you. But it also allows you to hop into traffic on a slightly busier road, maybe when you need to get from point A to point B. Riding the trail is quite a bit different than riding the XR150. For starters, its seat height is 1.3 inches lower, but then it also sits 3 inches closer to the ground, and you do notice it switching between motorcycles. Additionally, the 125cc electronic fuel-injected engine is really only capable of hitting about 60. It does have a rev limiter, and I have hit the rev limiter before, but you can see speed just rapidly falls off when there's an incline. The thing about the trail is that you're much more at the mercy of traffic than you are on the XR150. And what I mean by that is, on this you really do not have the power to overtake anybody. Unless you're pointed downhill, and unless that downhill section of road is long enough that you can get up to a speed where you could pass. One of the things to take note about the CT125 is that it does not have a hand clutch. There's nothing there. Instead, it has a 4-speed auto clutch, just like the old Honda Cub and the old Honda Trails. So basically, the auto clutch you operate with your foot, right? So you still have a shifter, so I can still shift, but I can rev the motorcycle by holding the shifter up or down, which is basically the same thing as me holding in the clutch with my hand. The downside to the auto clutch is that you do not have the same control of the motorcycle that you do with a hand clutch. An example would be if you were maybe riding over some big obstacles, or you were riding up a super steep hill. It's a little bit harder to engage the foot clutch and get that same kind of movement through it that you could by just pulling it in quick with your hand, revving the motorcycle, and then popping over said obstacle or powering your way up that hill. So it just takes a little more thought in your shifting. Your shifting has to be precise, it needs to be quick, and it's something that you get used to very quickly in riding one of these, but it definitely is different. The other thing that you'll notice is if you ride other motorcycles, if this is going to be one of many motorcycles in your fleet, you will find yourself sometimes going to shift down. This is sequential shifting, so it's neutral and then up to 1, up to 2, up to 3, and up to 4 rather than the XR150 or a traditional motorcycle, which is 1 down and then 4 up or 5 up in the case of another motorcycle. The XR150 is a 5-speed, so it would be 1 down and then 4 up. So right now, the speedometer says that we're going 48 miles per hour. So we are doing the speed limit on this, but anytime you roll to a very steep incline, your speed will fall off. Unfortunately, that's the reality of the trail. But one of my favorite things about the CT125 is how it handles off-road. So we are doing exactly the same loop that we did on the XR150 earlier. And this is a route that the CT125 is well accustomed with. I ride this on this route at least once every other week. At least. Off-road, the trail feels much clunkier than the XR150. It doesn't have as much suspension, and it doesn't sit as high off the ground. I think those two things combined make for a combination where this is a rougher ride off-road. There's no other way about it. With the stock suspension, this is going to ride rougher off-road. The front wheel is smaller. The rear wheel is the same size, although the tire sizes are different. But the front wheel is a 17 rather than the 19 found on the XR150. And that means it's not going to roll over big obstacles as well. That means rocks, roots, maybe some logs if you're way back in the woods somewhere. This is going to be one of the things that you want to consider if you're doing lots of off-road riding or trail riding. The Honda Trail is really meant for cruising on those things and not going fast. It's a matter of negotiating obstacles and not just plowing straight through them. One of the things that I have found riding the trail off-road, or the CT125 off-road, is that on very steep grades you will find that there are gaps in between the gears. It'll be steep enough where maybe you have to be in the first gear and you'll go to shift to second because you're gaining a little bit of speed, and you just bog right back down in second gear because the gap between the two is too big. I did not find that to be the case on the steep sections in Bent Creek that I've ridden the XR150 on. Time will tell if there are any roads too steep for it or any gaps in between the gears. Through the same rough section we rode the XR150 through, I find that the trail is getting jostled around significantly more, and it's requiring me to use the brake, whereas I did not use the brake on the XR150. Instead, I just casually rolled through on the XR150. One other thing to mention is the stock tires that come on the trail are basically street tires. I found that they were unreliable in loose gravel and in mud. I found myself sliding often with them, and I instead opted to get a different tire, and I've been using solely the Shinko 244s on the trail, maybe since the second week I've owned it 2 years ago. If you're going to be using one of these motorcycles for camping, I can't say enough good things about the size of the rack on the back of the trail. You can take so much with you. I have ridden through Great Smoky Mountains National Park, up through Tennessee, from Asheville to eastern Tennessee, and then on a 3-day trip with my father, with everything that I needed casually strapped to the rack on the back of the Honda Trail. Now, the XR150 does come with a rack, but it's nowhere near the size of the CT125's rack. And additionally, I don't think you could mount as big a case on the back as I have. I have mounted an Apache 4800 case from Harbor Freight, which is the largest box they have before it ends up with a wheeled case, and it's perfect. There's still room on the rack. It doesn't even take up the whole rack. It's really fantastic, and there's lots of nice things about the rack as well. For instance, it has threaded holes pre-drilled into it so that you can mount whatever it is you need to mount there. A milk crate, a box like mine, or maybe even a nicer piece of motorcycle luggage, but they would fit on there just fine. The rack has a weight capacity of 44 pounds, which is absurd. The rack on the XR150 has a sticker that says maximum weight capacity 11 pounds. So just to give you an idea of what each is capable of moving, it's pretty ridiculous. The trail will do fine off-road so long as you're patient with it. If you take your time and you're not in any hurry, you can cruise comfortably between 20 and 30 miles per hour on a smooth dirt road with it and be just fine. But if there's a whole bunch of big potholes and other things like that, you're going to want to just be careful, because it does not have the biggest wheels, it does not have the most suspension, and really, it does not have that much ground clearance in comparison to the XR150. But I have had no problems with it in the adventures I've done. I've put nearly 5,000 miles on this thing in the last 2 years, and I have done some epic adventures, ranging from super rocky, super technical stuff in eastern Tennessee to riding it to and from work, from commuting through town on it. It's an excellent motorcycle. It is reliable. It is so cheap to maintain. And boy, does this thing draw people in to talk about it. I can't stop at a gas station without people coming to talk about this motorcycle. One more thing to keep in mind about it though, it does only have a 1.4 gallon tank, and so it's very important that if you're going to be using it for longer trips, that you have spare fuel with you, or that you have fuel stops in mind and know that they're open. Some other thoughts about the trail. It's a really great bike for people that have a hard time getting around. And what I mean by that is, say you have arthritis in your hands, but you still want to be able to ride, the Honda Trail's perfect. There's no hand clutch, it's operated by your feet, it's a step-through frame, so if you have any hip or knee issues, you can still get on this pretty easily by stepping through, rather than having to swing your leg up and over a big heavy motorcycle or a big tall motorcycle like the XR150. And so in conclusion, how do these motorcycles compare, and which one is going to be right for you? Well, the Honda Trail is going to give you more bang for your buck if you are after fancy features. And what I mean by that is you will get electronic fuel injection, you will get disc brakes front and rear with an ABS front brake, you will get LED lights, a fuel gauge, an electronic display, but the downsides are that you will only have a 4-speed auto clutch, you will have smaller 17-inch wheels, you will only have a 1.4 gallon fuel tank, and so you will have to keep an eye on when you're filling up, and out the door, it's going to cost you at minimum $4,000, and that is before dealer fees and taxes. The XR150, on the other hand, is going to give you simplicity. It is a 150cc carbureted engine. It has a very simple disc brake front, drum brake rear setup. It does have a 19-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear, so it's going to be a little better for rolling over obstacles. It does have nearly twice the amount of suspension travel, but you're not going to have LED lights, you're not going to have a fuel gauge, you're going to have an analog display, and it's going to be just a little bit heavier. But really what it's going to come down to is what you want to do with the motorcycle. In the 5,000 miles that I've put on the CT125 that I own, I have found that it is extremely capable. I have ridden incredibly technical terrain, I have ridden long distances on pavement, and I ride it on dirt at least every other week. It is a fantastic machine, and it comes with a lot of really fantastic features. I really think it's most at home riding slower B roads, back roads, dirt roads. I would not want to ride this on trail, and I would not want to ride this in busy, heavy traffic with high speed limits. The XR150, on the other hand, is a motorcycle that can keep up in busier traffic. It can overtake when necessary. It gets the same gas mileage and would be a fantastic commuter, would be fantastic on longer off-road adventures, and with the proper equipment and accessories, could probably do some light trail riding. I think that that motorcycle is just as capable as the trail, and in some ways more capable. But what it's going to come down to is what you're using it for. In my case, I'm doing long off-road adventures, and I'm doing lots of commuting. Both of these are fantastic machines, and I will enjoy riding both of these at different times.